Well, it looks like it's going to be a eventful Wednesday. So, Devin and Matthew, thanks for joining us. Um,
Ned, can you throw the doors open so they can actually participate in the meetings? It's a
that's
small group.
that's what I was actually just thinking. Considering it looks like a lot of people have taken off for the holidays early, I'm going to let you guys have the ability to talk if you want and ask questions while we're going through this. Um,
And if you
so,
want to turn your cameras on, we can even see each other.
and I totally understand if you are also in a meeting room or something. But again, thanks for joining us. We will be going over our monthly demand for higher educations for community colleges this month. Um, this will be recorded, obviously, and I think that's what a lot of people are expecting, considering the low attendance today. So, one personal flash shout out for attending today, and I will hand it over to Bob Atkins.
Thanks very much, Ned, and welcome, Devin and Matthew, to the world's smallest webinar. If you guys think we should continue to do webinars for community colleges, please do let me know. I thought it was important to recognize that it's a different segment and it has different trends. And so again, if you think it's important we continue this, we will. But if even our hardcore doesn't, then we probably will stop. Let's see. So without further ado, here's what I'm going to talk about. We'll talk about what a program evaluation system is in case either of you don't already know. Then we'll go through student demand. We'll talk a little bit about employment, and we'll share our program of the month. So what is a PES, or program evaluation system? Well, it's a system that includes data, software, and the right people and process to make good program decisions. So what data do you need? You need data about your markets. It seems almost obvious, but hasn't been the case in many cases in the educational system, whether it's 2 years or 4 years. And within the 2 years, there's a very big bias in markets to look almost exclusively at labor market requirements. And you really need to understand student demand as well, and to a lesser degree, competition. I still don't know if competition is good or bad. We've looked at a lot of this data, and generally in very healthy growing markets, there's a lot of competition. And it seems to be a hallmark of a good program rather than a concern. But it does depend on how good you are at marketing and attracting students. If you're good at it, you can actually take share from others, and competition is your friend. We also need to understand margins and make sure we're not spending more money, for example, marketing, than we make off the student that comes into a given program. We also need to know which programs are large enough to generate the margins that are needed to subsidize other smaller programs that can't stand on their own 2 feet, but are still critical to the mission of the institution. Of course, we have to meet our academic standards, whether those are internal standards for pass rates or quality of education, or external standards like the NCLEX exam for nurses, and making sure that our students pass those. And finally, and centrally in higher ed, it's about the mission. And we do need to keep in mind that programs that are mission aligned may be continued even if they are not contribution positive or in great markets. And there are lots of examples of those where I'll give you one. If you're a religious institution teaching, say, ministry, even though it's a small program, there are not a lot of jobs for ministers, the pay is not great. As somebody told me, the retirement benefits are terrific. But I think they meant after you pass. It's still going to be a program you might want to teach at that institution because it's central to your mission. I'd love to tell you that Gray has built an AI program that can tell you what academic programs to offer, and that it's all algorithmic, and you don't need to do the hard work and get the people together to make these decisions. But that's not true. And even if we had the algorithm, I don't think anybody would pay any attention to it. You need the right people involved in the right process to make sound decisions and to ensure that they're supported and implemented by the organization. So I'm going to run through this. So we think about student demand. The source everybody likes to go to is iPads, which is great, but it's as out of date as the fashion on this particular woman. It's 2022 data at this point, which tells us what students chose as their major when they picked it 3 to 5 years before that. So we're looking at data from 2019 about what students wanted. In 2023, that feels pretty old to me, and we're about to be in 2024. Enrollment data is much more current. So we get it 3 times a year. You'll be seeing data for the last full academic year when we talk about it today. So very current data, very comprehensive from the National Center of Education Statistics. All your Title IV completions are going to be in there as they are in IPEDS. Do keep in mind, in particular in two-year colleges, that there are programs where they're not in either IPEDS or in enrollment data because they're not really programs, but schools that are not, because they don't take Title IV. They're taking credit cards or other forms of cash payment from students. And you'll see that a lot in cosmetology and, say, dental assisting. So there are particular programs where the competition is going to be understated in those two systems. And finally, there's Google, and everything gets caught up in here, at least until Bard, it gets replaced by some other form of AI. But the beauty of Google is it's a little bit forward-looking. This is where students are when they're thinking about what they want to take in the future. So it gives us a little bit of visibility into demand trends that we're going to see on campus in 6 to 12 months. Now, let's see what those sources are saying. So completions, believe it or not, with all the problems in higher ed at the two-year level, and there have been many, completions are actually up between 2013 and 2022. It's up 1% since 2017. What's happened here, I believe, is that we've gotten better at getting students through school. Enrollment is not, as we'll see in a moment, up over this period. But it is actually quite heartening to see an increase in completions because it means a higher percentage of students who are going to college are having a successful outcome. As we look online, the percentage has been going up steadily through 2020 and then took a huge jump in 2021. And that's an artificial effect of COVID. That should have tempered in 2022, but we're probably still seeing COVID impact on online enrollment for associate and certificates. I expect that will tone down a bit, but still a pretty substantial chunk of growth. What was growing? Well, here are the fastest growing programs, certificate programs in 2022. That's taking 2022 completions from IPEDS, the new data set, compared to 2021 completions. And we can see that we've got a whole array of different things. Esthetician and skin care at 27% growth, related program, nail specialist and manicurist up 20%, so sort of personal care categories. Barbering, another personal care category, up 18%. So very strong interest in that area. We've got commercial truck and bus driver up 22%. If you will, the rumors that there could be that it's all going to be automated, we won't need truck drivers, hasn't quite taken place yet. So there's still lots of jobs unfilled for that particular area and students interested in them. Mechanics, auto mechanics in particular, up 16%. Electricians, HVAC, so your core trades are up. Computer info sciences and cybersecurity, our IT programs up 12%. And finally, criminal justice and corrections. One of the issues with these growth trends that you have to keep in mind is that they change pretty dramatically year over year. So out of the top 10 this year, the dark lines are the ones where the enrollment trend this year is also in the top 10. So only 5 of the ones where the completions went up in 2022 also were in the top 10 in terms of enrollment growth in 2022-23. So a lot of volatility. What I would say is you don't want to make a program decision like, do I offer this or not, based on pure growth data. However, when you're thinking about where to emphasize in terms of marketing or admissions, this data is very useful. You can come in and pick a program that's hot and jump on that trend and do well with that for as long as that trend lasts. And then obviously you'd shift to something else later on. So keep that in mind. No data, individual item of data is enough to make a program decision, but certainly this particular type of data is highly volatile. There we go. Now we look at associates programs and what's growing quickly. Diagnostic medical sonography, ultrasound is number one with 21% growth. That's a really good program. It pays well, lots of jobs. It's moderately expensive to implement, but you can see the growth here. It's pretty rigorous too. So it's not for just anybody as a student. You have to have fairly good academic discipline to be able to get through that. You can see the associates program at Auto Mechanics Tech also grew 20%. We got medical billing and coding, cybersecurity up 14%, IT up 12, welding, surge tech, both around 10, economics general up 8%, then rad tech and culinary arts chef training up 7% each. And again, you can see that very few of the programs where completion volume was high last year are also in rapidly growing programs this year. Only 3 of them are on both lists. Note one of them is cybersecurity. This is one of those programs that's going to keep growing. The job demand is growing. The pay is great. I don't see this coming to a close anytime soon. The cyber challenges are just never ending. One thing I always say when I get here, though, is that I think there's an opportunity for many schools to offer a low-tech, not no-tech cyber program. In our experience here at Gray, I expected cybersecurity to be primarily about technical issues, and there are plenty. But there's a whole nother layer of documentation that's required where really the skill is being thorough and writing well. And and having technical knowledge, but not being particularly technical, and project managing the whole compliance process for this. So I think there's an opportunity in here for less technical people and a program for less technical people to get to the point where they can be help with the cybersecurity effort, help manage the processes, help keep the documents current without having to be network techs, for example. Online competitors in 2022, the real issue here is that there's just a dramatic difference in scale between the major online players in the 2-year space and everybody else. So as we look at these numbers, keep in mind that the total completions for the average institution, not for one program, total completions online is 80. So they're trying to run online programs with a total of 80 students taking them online. I would argue that's subscale and you run into all sorts of problems with infrastructure, not having people available in the evening to help with technical issues or to do tutoring or do financial aid. And then you look at the guys who are actually serious about this, and University of Phoenix has 8,000 students in their online programs just at the 2-year level and below. They have over 100, I think it's about 80,000 students total. So they're at scale at 2-year, and they're even, obviously enormously more scaled when it comes to a 4-year degree. Ultimate Medical Academy, 7,500. Eastern Gateway, I think many of you have heard about this. They did this in a way that was not at all compliant, marginally ethical. And so that number's inflated and has come down to approximately 0 at this point. Ivy Tech, these are, by the way, you could call them individual community college, but Ivy Tech is all the community college system for the state of, I think, Indiana. Lone Star colleges, all the community colleges in Houston. So these are big operations, but also very large online. Purdue Global, DeVry, APUS, this is primarily military, and then Southern New Hampshire University. This is another one where total enrollment's up near 100,000, but they have a healthy contingent in the 2-year space as well. And finally, Hillsborough Community College. What's going on with enrollment? Well, we all know the bad part of this picture. Certificates down in 18-19, down again doing 19, the academic year 1920 and 2021. Then we started to have an uptick as we went into 21-22, and we had another uptick in 22-23. So a little bit of good news here in terms of new enrollment in certificate programs. We look at new enrollment associate programs, and that was a pretty dark picture, and then finally took a tick up in 2022-23. And the folks that I'm talking to in community colleges are seeing a little bit of growth now. There's one locally that I've been speaking with who's actually looking at double-digit growth. That's a little bit of a Massachusetts phenomenon. There's a version of free college that's coming through here that's making it attractive. I think what we're seeing in part is the job market's getting a little tighter, and so people are starting to come back to school. And by the way, if you're looking for a predictor of enrollment, skip demographics. All you need to know is what's happening in the unemployment rate. There's a 75% R-squared between the change in the unemployment rate and the change in enrollment. So I think a lot of what we've been dealing with that we think is demographics is not. The number of people graduating from high school has not dropped. I'm going to say that again. The number of people graduating from high school has not dropped. It may drop a couple years from now. However, obviously, we know enrollment's dropped. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is we've had a good economy. And in a good economy, people work. They don't go back to school. It's not in their long-term best interest, but it looks good in the short term. So that's my belief of what's really going on. Happy to share the detailed numbers with you if you're interested. Now, certificate academic year 2022, fastest growing new enrollment. So now we're moving from the completions data from iPads into enrollment. And what we're seeing here is IT at the top, computer and information sciences right behind it. Then we've got career and technical education taking 6 of the top slots, health information records, truck driving again, dental assisting, auto mechanics tech, welding, and cosmetology. Notice these enrollment rates are quite a bit lower than what we were seeing before in terms of completion growth. We're looking at now a 4-year time frame too, rather than a 1-year year over year. So this gives you, it goes all the way back pre-COVID now, so you can see how these programs have grown overall across that entire time period. Now, in 2022, same thing, fastest growing new enrollment, and we're at the associate level now, and we're looking at 4-year trend, not a 4-year college program. So this is comparing 18-19 to 2022-23. By far, the fastest growing program in enrollment over that period has been cybersecurity. It's up 16% annually. Over this 4-year period, that means that program's up a little over 80% in 4 years. And so by next year, it will have doubled in size. Keep in mind that even in 2019, this is a decent sized program. So it's not growing off a base of 0. And it continues to grow in all the work that we've seen. So this is, if you haven't got it, this is a key program to have on your campus, and one where you can invest and grow if you can find the instructors. Real estate at 8%, natural sciences up 8% annually over that period. History, can you believe it? My major up 6%. So exciting to see one of the liberal arts actually growing. Visual and performing arts up 6%, economics general. By the way, I want to reinforce, these are annual growth rates, so that's 6 to the 4th, or 1.106 to the 4th. So that's about 20% growth over this period if you took the cumulative growth over the 4 years. And here's diagnostic medical sonography again, marketing management, computer support, and computer science. So I look at some of these things that I think are going to be trends for as far as the eye can see. Cybersecurity is one. The computer sciences at the bottom are going to continue to grow, even off large bases. And I find diagnostic medical sonography pretty interesting. It's come up on a couple of our charts now. Good, strong 5-year growth, annual growth rate over 5 years, and leading to a good career. So everything, all the stars line up for that, if you will. Now let's transition over and look at forward-looking indicators. So if you, again, the iPads gives us a sense of what happened, what people wanted several years ago. Enrollment tells us about right now. Now we're seeing what is happening in terms of what people are looking for going forward. And this is very encouraging information. I've been watching this September. We started to beat last year and by a healthy margin. October, beat again. November, we beat again. And just in terms of how to read this chart, 2021 is the dark blue, 22 is the gray, and 2023 is the light blue. We're actually up 21% in November. So this very promising sign in terms of new enrollment in workforce programs over the next 6 to 12 months. And you can see this really just switched around. Early in the year, we were running behind. Then we kind of got to even, and now we're starting to run substantially ahead of prior years. What's happened to the cost of competing on Google? And this is actually a really interesting chart I plan to do a little more analysis on. Again, you've got the 3 years, gray 2021, blue, dark blue 2022, light blue 2023. This is the cost of a click on Google for a given program. So if you clicked on a link to look at nursing programs, this is what it would have cost the school to capture that click. In 2021, people were paying $13.35 on average. That's dropped by $2, or a little over 20%. That's a big drop over that time period. And one of the things I wonder about when I see a drop like that, and then I look back and think about the enrollment declines, is did we shoot ourselves in the foot? Um, is the problem here as we see the prices come down? That's because there's people aren't bidding as much for those same search terms. And so there, to me, it's a sign the marketing budget is shrinking. And we'll cross-check that and multiply the data out to make sure that's the case. But if so, then one of the things that's caused all those declines is we just weren't out there marketing. And since we didn't market, we didn't get the students. And now that the marketing budgets are flat year over year, we're starting to see the enrollment tick up again. That might be the biggest in history, but I do think it's a challenge the way people are thinking right now, which is, because things are down, I'm going to cut back on marketing to save money. I don't know what metaphor to use for that, but if you don't expect that when you cut marketing, you're going to cut enrollment, you shouldn't do any marketing. It means the marketing you have is a waste of money, which in most cases is not true. So I think we may be looking at something where the budget changes we made actually induced some of the problems we faced. So what is the fastest growing programs on Google? A little different than what we've seen so far. Here we see MRI tech at 70% up, some trades, electrician, nail manicurist, HVAC, cosmetology, diesel tech, all up, well, close to 50%. Legal assistant, paralegal, up 38%, tax prep, up 37%. This always gets big at this time of year, by the way. So this will stay pretty high until we get to about April and drop back again. Massage therapy, up 35%, business and operations support, up 32%. So I guess what you can take away from them, not only are death and taxes certain, but they're both growth industries right now. So let's take a look at things that are outside traditional programs. And for this, we look at data from your MOOCs, massively open online courses. And the reason we do this is it tells us what people are interested in who are looking at getting a certificate or learning about something, but not necessarily getting a degree. And there are lots of players who offer MOOC services. Udemy and Coursera are two of the biggest. edX just merged. These are very large players, as you'll see. If we look at Coursera, for example, since inception, so going way back whenever they first started offering business programs, probably over a decade ago, they have enrolled 23 million people in their business programs. Now, keep in mind that enrollment here is not the same as enrollment in your courses. I might be able to even enroll for free and just drop out within a day, within an individual class. And a lot of that does take place. So it's not really apples to compare these to, say, an enrollment in a traditional higher education institution. Nonetheless, they're massive numbers. Also, keep in mind it's global. So this is not just US. In here, at one point, edX said to me that they were the university in Pakistan. They're very big numbers. They're global numbers, and they run over a long time. Computer science is number 2, data science. Then we get into life sciences in the categories personal development, arts and humanities, language learning. This is really interesting to me, given the decline in language learning at almost every college I talk to. It's a very healthy set of courses online. Information technology, physical science and engineering, social science, and math and logic. And here, even math got 1.2 million students, and that's a tough subject. So lest you think this is all about being techie, what we found when we looked at highest cumulative enrollment in courses is that 3 of what I would call very squishy, science of well-being, not quantitative, not engineering, not tech. These 3 courses actually have as many students enrolled as the top 9 technical courses put together. So there is still space out there for courses that are not technical, and the volumes are very substantial. On the high cumulative course volumes, Speak English Professionally, Fundamentals of Graphic Design, Introduction to Philosophy. Interesting that you can get 640,000 people to do that online, even though most philosophy programs that I know of are struggling for enrollment. There's still interest out there. Indigenous Canada, Learn to Speak Korean 1 and First Step Korean. So maybe we're teaching the wrong languages. English for business and mind shift breakthrough. On the technical side, fundamental courses like data everywhere, neural networks, algorithms. I think we're going to see all sorts of things start to crop up here that are about AI. That could be here in algorithms. It's certainly in neural networks. Traditional JavaScript, data science, flavor, a component of AI, R, data scientist toolbox, using Python to access web data, and SQL for data science. So a lot of data science, which again would roll up into the sorts of people who are going to be working on AI projects. Now, there's a fallacy out there that we like to bring up, which is the concept of direct prep. So if you think about nursing as a good example, I study nursing, then what am I ready to do? Well, I'm ready to be a nurse. And that's what direct prep is. It's the idea that what I study is what I'm going to go do later. Well, that's not actually how the world works. When we looked out there, there were exactly no programs where more than 80% of the students went into fields for which they were directly prepared. There were no programs where over 80% of the people went into the fields for which they're directly prepared. So the idea that I study this and I do that, not true. Now, if you said, okay, well, I know not everybody's going to go, but let's say 60 to 79% of the students go into fields for which are directly prepared. Well, not really. 11 out of 634 programs had that percentage of student graduates go into field for which are directly prepared. One of those is actually nursing, but there are others where you get at least a 60% threshold. But by and large, people just don't do what they're directly prepared to do. If I look at the number of programs where less than 20% of the students go into the fields for which they're directly prepared, I find in our database there are about 500 of those out of the 634 programs we analyzed. So more than 2/3 of the time, 80% of the people are not going to go into fields for which they're directly prepared. Which to me says that if you're intentionally or unintentionally using data that's based on the NCS crosswalk, you're actually getting wrong answers. Now, why does this matter? It matters because a lot of the traditional data suppliers use that crosswalk or something similar to it, which would suggest that, history, I'll show you in a moment what happens with psychology, but it's fundamentally misleading because direct prep and a direct prep analysis between the programs people take, the SIPs, and the occupations they go into is not reality. So let's give an example. Let's talk about psychology. So the crosswalk, the standard one, the National Center for Education Statistics, and most of your labor market data suppliers are going to use things that look a lot like this in the sense that they have about a similar number of jobs that people can go into. They may have somewhat different individual job titles, but this would suggest, for example, that we're going to have all kinds of psychologists coming out of undergraduate and, in this case, 2-year programs. We all know that's not possible because they can't practice psychology without more advanced degrees. So that's a bit of a problem. Well, what we've done is go out and gather data on 70 million people, what their undergraduate area of study was, what degree they've received, what jobs they get. So it's just facts about people rather than theory of direct prep saying this is what they should be going off and doing. And you find people are just going into almost completely different fields than we see over here. First thing you'll notice is that we've cleaned out all the jobs that require higher level degrees. So if you have an associate's degree, this is what you do with a psychology degree. You might become a general manager. You might become and this is, by the way, 1 year post-graduation. It's really 1 to 3 years post-graduation. You might become an admin assistant. A lot of people are going to end up doing things like customer service rep or manager. Chief executives, be careful. This is really business owners, solo operators, all kinds of things are chucked into this particular job title as an occupation. So it'd be better called owners and one person shops owners and senior executives. That's why it comes out so high in the ranking. Sales reps, project managers, human resources specialists, sales managers, home health and personal aides. Now you'll notice that there is one that got right over here, right? We got managers. But other than that, none of the direct prep jobs are in the top 10 jobs that people really get. So careful with your labor market data. A lot of it is wrong, and it's not wrong by a little bit. It is massively incorrect. Now, even if we did do more of a direct prep, or in fields where you'd expect people to be going into direct prep, you find out it's actually more variable than that. So, we've got corrections graduates that could have gone into 4 fields, and you look 1 year post-graduation, and you're actually doing a variety of things. Most of them are in and around criminal justice, but we've got some managers, we've got some customer service reps. Again, we've got those small business folks, but project management, sales reps, and executive assistants. So even in a field like this, where you'd expect people to go into a particular area, they often don't. And you could view that as a mistake, that's some defect in the program. I don't look at it that way. Many of these jobs that they'll end up with will pay better than what they might have gone into. So it really shows, in effect, capitalism at work. People get a degree and then they figure out the best thing they can do with that in their local market, where the local employment opportunities are. Now, there is some bad news in the job posting front. Job postings are actually off, and they have been getting lower and lower for some time. And we're down 10% year over year on job postings in our data, and it's been dropping pretty quickly all of this year. Now, keep in mind, this is 2022 in the gray now and 2023 in the light blue. We're still looking at post-COVID effects here, where the job postings spiked enormously. And so even last year, you can see it starting to come down as we work through post-COVID job shortages. And then this line, the blue bars, show you how that played out in the subsequent year. And you can see these are starting to get into line now, where last year is starting to look a lot like this year, and the COVID effect is wearing off. Of course, we also are looking at the impact of the Federal Reserve here and slowing down in the overall economy. Last I checked, though, we're still at levels of job postings that are, kind of about pre-COVID levels. So we're not really down. We're just, it's the right way to say it. We're coming off an artificial peak. What's growing out there in terms of jobs? Tellers, amazingly enough, and they haven't all been automated away. Bookkeeping and accounting clerks, interpreters and translators, dietitians, and physical therapy assistants, all up over 20%. Fast food counter workers, paralegals, diagnostic medical sonographers, third time we've seen that. So there's healthy job market in addition to being a healthy amount of student demand. Psych techs and police and sheriff patrol officers, all up in the teens or better. Now, what skills are needed? Well, I guess we live in a litigious society. Litigation support is number one. That really surprises me, given what AI can do a lot of that work. So the lawyers are a little behind in their tech. Event planning, accruals, risk management frameworks. This is consistent with the accounting and tax stuff we've been seeing. Risk management, for those of you who don't speak business doublespeak, that means insurance, critical illness insurance, intervention plans, I suspect, is an insurance issue, consumer privacy, payment processing, KPIs, and emotional support. Now let's turn to our program of the month, and we'll look at student demand, employment, competition, and degree fit for one program. First, one of the things we do that's unique is we can actually take each of 1,500 academic programs, look at 50 variables for them, and because that's all consistent data, we can then score and rank those programs. So here we see the program name for the top 20 or so out of our system. Remember, this list actually does go on for another 1,500 programs. An overall score, a score for student demand, competition, jobs, and degree fit. You'll notice degree fit's all the same. That's because we've essentially taken that field out of play for this analysis, since we're not sure what degree level you're going to be most interested in. Now let's pick an individual program. And we're picking EMT paramedic zip code, and we're going to go look at that in some more depth. And when we look at paramedic, First thing you'll notice is this is dark green. What does that mean? Well, dark green means a program is on that given metric is in the top 2% of our data. So out of the 1,500 programs, it's one of the top 30. And then the light green is 94 to 97%, and so forth on down until you get to pink. And the simple way to think about this is green is good, red is bad. So what's going on? Well, Google search volumes are very healthy, 97th percentile. International, we just don't have any, and that's not unusual for two-year programs. So I wouldn't interpret that as a negative, but I also wouldn't expect to get a lot of international students in for this particular program. New student enrollment is very healthy, 98th percentile. And online completions by in-market students actually is pretty big. Now, that is interesting because those are people who are taking this program online, but they may be taking a school that's not in your market. So SNHU would show up in here if you were in California. Their students would show up in this online completions by in-market students. What's happening in terms of growth? Google search volume is up 9%, getting a mixed story here. New student enrollment down 6%, and completion volume up 4%. So what this tells you is it was growing. That's why the completion volume is up. It isn't growing right now. That's why enrollment is down. It might grow in the future, i.e. Google search volumes are up, so there are more students looking for this year than there were last year. So what do we know? If we look at all the size areas, it's almost all pretty dark green or dark green. So it's a very big program. Growth is a mixed bag. Depending on which metric you pick, you could conclude that this is growing or not. So if I were managing this, I'd be cautious in investing in it. I don't really know if the growth is going to continue. And I would take that, if you will, semester to semester, not make any, I don't think I'd make big bets here if I were already in the program. Paramedic scores in the 80th percentile on employment. And you can see here the job postings, 98th percentile, lots of job postings for this. Interesting and important metric we keep now, underemployed percentage of graduates, 21%. That's a 6th percentile. So compared to other programs, very few of the graduates of this program end up in a job that does not require college education. That's what the underemployed means. So, my history majors actually have a pretty high percentage of unemployed because, yes, indeed, some of us do become baristas. So that's how we would keep track of that. And that allows you to look at it and say, are the graduates of my program getting into the kinds of jobs that we're hoping for? Growth is mediocre here. We got a little bit of a decline, looks better over the 3-year period. Job postings per graduate are good, 75th percentile. There are 1.8 job postings for every person coming out of an EMT program. Now, obviously, there are going to be other ways you fill those jobs, not just new college grads. You'll be hiring from other, promoting from within and hiring from other companies. But that's a good ratio. You can see it's a 75th percentile. What happens to wages? Entry level, this is the first 3 years after you graduate. The 25th percentile wage here is $31,000 in the actual occupations these folks go into. Post-entry, that's after the first 3 years, $53,000. So people are moving their way up. The median with an associate's is $50,000. Median with a bachelor's post-entry, so that's again 3 years after graduation, 62. And if you were to go all the way to having a master's, it's 78. Now, keep in mind that in any of these, the degree, the bachelor's or master's, could be in a different field. It doesn't mean you got a master's in EMT or paramedic. You might have gotten a master's in something else entirely and then become an EMT. And when we look about online, we've got about 25% of the folks here who have a graduate degree, some with a master's, some with a doctorate. Again, probably not in this field, or they were an EMT and they went on to become an MD, for example. So if we look at competition, this is a very competitive program. You can see now we've moved out of our blue, green, and blue, and we're into yellow and red. 633 campuses offer this. That's 99th percentile competition, very high. We have had a small decline in number of institutions that offer it. I'm sorry, it's a decline. And as I look at this, the median completions in this program are pretty low, 9, and it's dropping. That really worries me. That means that people who have this program are having trouble filling their seats. It's not very expensive if you want to market online, only $3 cost per click. And you'll remember our average is about 13 or 14. So it's inexpensive to market this particular program. And it's not really an online program yet. You only have 4% of the institutions offering it online, and 2% of the completions are taking place online. Not surprising. This could be done as a hybrid program, low residency. It's a popular thing right now where people can live someplace else, come in for a week or two of intensive clinical training, and then go back home and take the rest of their didactic program online. Now, degree fit, mostly this is some college and associates. So the idea that it might be a certificate at a community college makes a ton of sense, as you all know. Cost benchmarking is interesting, though. Here, what this value is it's on a 1 is average. So I'm looking at a program where it's a little below average in terms of cost per student credit hour taught, and I'm sorry, and yeah, and the median cost per credit hour is above average at 1.28. So I tend to focus on the median in all these statistics because one large program can skew the averages quite a bit. EMT paramedic, what gender and why do you care? So this program is 62% male. It draws disproportionately from the white community, a little bit from Hispanic as well, but not even Hispanics. Or let me explain how to read this chart. So this is the average demographic for the market in higher ed. So indeed, in higher education, 61% of the students in higher ed are female, 39% are male. That's a huge problem. So I look at male here and say if I can bring people into college, this one will attract male students who are a small and declining minority on campus. Another thing to keep in mind, if you want to know what's been going on with enrollment, is fundamentally the biggest single drop-off is white men. So they're not going to college. And that'll all come back. I think if the economy does get soft, we'll see some of those folks coming back. But for the meantime, our message isn't working in that marketplace. So this particular one's likely to attract exactly that demographic, which is interesting if you were trying to beef that up on your campus and say, look, I need to have a program these guys want to take. This would be it. Conversely, if you were trying to attract women, nursing tends to be a program that skews, I think it's 90% female. And I only say this to say, if you are picking programs, you're actually making choices about what the demographic makeup of your campus is going to be over the next few years. So that means you can use programs to achieve some of your demographic objectives. And finally, here's a one-pager that pulls all our data together so that if you're making program decisions, you don't have to hunt around through a bunch of different documents. And as you get good at it, it becomes very easy to interpret. I can look at it at a glance and say, oh, I'm good on student demand. Oh, yeah, it's big. My growth, not clear, and I might have to dig into that a little bit. Employment, yep, it's big again, lots of entry-level jobs. Wages, not so great. And competition, yep, highly competitive. And I got lots of different campuses. And now I get to, again, my personal favorite metric here. Decline in program size, not good. I'd be worried about that if I were thinking about getting in. And then last but not least, what demographic am I trying to attract, and are they in this program? Again, if I wanted, white men, I'd probably go after this. It's almost a heresy to talk about that, but that is, it's just math. I was shocked to see it. But it is now true that a white male between the ages of 18 and 24 is less likely to be in college than a woman of any race. So a summary, from 2017 to 2022, total completions are actually up. Online was up 17%. Estheticians, our fastest grower. And as you'll recall, there are a couple of other things that are in that whole personal care category that are growing quite rapidly. Diagnostic medical sonography was hot across many of our metrics, and certainly in terms of complete certificate completions as well. We've got tech, not surprisingly, also in the top growers, 15% up in IT, and associate cybersecurity up 16%. Google searches for direct workforce programs grew 21% year over year, and MRI tech grew 70%. Most traditional labor market sources, as we talked about, focus on direct prep. Be super careful, that data is not accurate, and it's not approximately accurate. Even in corrections, which is logically a pretty direct prep program where people are going to go into corrections-related fields, they really go into 698 occupations, not 4. And finally, there is a strong demand for EMT paramedic programs. Student demand's good. Employment opportunities are reasonably good. The pay is not great. The competition, however, is intense. So you'd want to be sure that you were good at competing if you're thinking about launching that program. And if you have it, you need to recognize that it is highly competitive, and you're going to have to make some extra effort to attract students to your program. So I hope you'll join us next month. In January, we'll be running the same webinar around 2 p.m. on January 24th. And of course, we'll do it again for the bachelor's level the next day. If you want to learn more about program evaluation, the book is a great place to start. It's a very helpful guidebook. I'm just surprised, honestly. I'd never written a book before, and I've had a lot of people tell me that it really is helpful in helping an institution figure out how to do program evaluation on an ongoing basis, what data they need, how to evaluate it, and what process they need in order to make those decisions well. So feel free to go on Amazon and grab a copy. And if you need a bunch of copies for your school or something, you can get them there. Call us. We might help you out with that as well.
One last plug. January 11th at 2 p.m. is our biggest webinar of the year. 5 programs that should be on your radar in 2024.
And I was looking back because when we do this webinar every year, one of the things we do is we look at our predictions from prior years and see how we did. And I would say, it was a bit of a mixed bag last year. We had some that haven't really taken off, but one of the things by itself was enough of a success to justify all the rest. We started talking about the creator economy last year. The creator economy grew a couple $2 billion this year. And people are starting to make actual money as creators and influencers. So think of these folks as, online influencers is a short way of thinking of it. That's a real business. It's a real job now. I think it'd be easy to attract students for because they know what it is. Many of them are already doing it. But to really become pros, there's a lot they could learn about video production, about how to manage a business, about the particular content in a given area that they might want to become experts in. So I think it's a solid program now, where I would have said a few years ago it was more of a speculation. I think it's very real, and I was delighted to see that we'd actually highlighted it last year. So we've hit a couple of really big home runs in this stuff. We started talking about data science as a growth area in 2015. I would encourage you to attend. You'll get it's fun. There's some interesting stuff. And hopefully we'll give you some ideas that you can take home and use.
To that end, there is a brand new blog on our website with hits and misses. It does highlight our biggest hit, which was from 2 years ago. We called it creative AI. We almost called it generative AI, but we were pretty darn close 2 years ago. So take a quick read.
And Devin and Matthew, any questions, comments?
Or Sue?
No, I think I'm good, but I do appreciate your time. Enjoyed the webinar.
Oh, good. Thank you, Devin.
Yeah,
Matthew?
same thing. Good information, much appreciated.
And Sue, you're joining, and you're just in time for us to end. If you're welcome to click off your mic and tell us what you were hoping to get. All this information will be on our website by tomorrow. We'll go through for a final edit tonight. And so if you've missed, you can watch the video or download the charts, whichever you prefer. Did you have any particular questions you want to address today? Sue?
I think she's out there. Anyway, thanks again, everybody. Devin, I hope you down at where are you? Colvin Stockter, it's always great seeing somebody that's been with us for as long as you guys have. So have a very happy holiday, and Sue to you as well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yep. Merry Christmas. Well, whatever. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.